Hi there, fellow entrepreneur. In this lesson, we will talk about goals. I've already explained several times that a goal is a specific, unambiguous, measurable, desired outcome, preferably time restricted. The reason this needs to be this way is simply that anyone involved in making a goal come true needs to understand exactly what the goal is, how achieving the goal is measured, and what time frame that applies. Providing unparalleled customer service sounds nice, but how do you measure it? And can we spend 600 years making that reality? So we need to create goals that are specific, measurable, and time restricted. And if people are served goals that are unattainable, they tend to just nod their head politely while walking back to their desks, trying to look busy while having already given up on the goal. So goals should be achievable. And this is why the formation of a strategy is so important, and having everyone involved in this process so that they, alongside everyone else, you included, agree that what have come up with as our goals, backed by the direction and actions to make it real, is in fact achievable. But this is a process, and it's completely fine to set lofty goals as long as your actions support them. We will get into this in a bit. So in our example, we already had a goal, reach the peak of the mountain within 30 days. This was just an example. In a normal situation, when forming a strategy, you start with your diagnosis. And once it's done, once you have unearthed all the information about your situation, that is your current location on the map, the concept of here, that's when it makes sense to start figuring out your goals, or as I call them in context of the simple strategy framework, the concept of there. So from our diagnosis, we know everything there is to know about here. And then we can start to set our goals, putting on the map the concept of there, or in other words, where we want to go. So based on the deep understanding of our current location, including in a business sense how we're doing, such as how many customers we have, what products they buy, what is our margin, what is the sales process, where is the drop off, what costs do we have, what vendors we rely on, who is involved, what processes we have, what our customers like and dislike, what our competitors are doing, and possibly thousands of other parameters. That's when we can start to define goals. And they are typically driven by problems we have identified that we want to fix, or opportunities we would like to pursue. So the stuff we want to fix, they are goals because we want to change something from how it is today to something different over time. Such as that example with Google wanting to reduce the time it takes to display search results by 30%, and that they would like that to happen within 60 days. The new stuff we want to start doing, that's new opportunities, they're goals as well, such as identifying that we have an unfair advantage from our strength that our competitors don't have, and we can make a new product, a new service, or change the way we do something to make it address that opportunity. The specific thing we want to create or change is also a goal, as long as we follow the rules of defining it as a goal, measurable and specific over time. So from our diagnosis, we should be able to identify and start to form these goals. These goals may not be perfect yet, meaning that they may seem unattainable at first because you may not have the resources you need to achieve them, but that is okay at this stage because you want to identify as many possible fixes to problems and possible opportunities as you can derived from your diagnosis. And this is key to remember. We don't want a bunch of new ideas pulled from thin air. We want specific goals that address the findings in our diagnosis. Stay focused so you benefit from all the work you have done diagnosing your situation, defining where you are. When working on creating such goals, I recommend you start with all the problems, the bottlenecks you have identified in your business, and these are typically easier to address than broadening your focus to address new opportunities while you still have potential for improvement. So when I do this work, I once again go to the whiteboard with my sticky notes. I map out goals addressing the problem, so the weaknesses that we have identified. So as an example, if you spot an issue in your production line making, I don't know, let's pretend making the Tesla Model 3, and this issue is crippling your production capacity, leading to under-delivering on the demand for that specific car, should you fix that problem or focus on exploring the opportunities of, say, a new model? So my assessment of this is that you should fix the Model 3 production because you have identified that there is room for improvement and you likely can deliver into an existing underserved demand. More importantly, the problems you are having in the existing production, will, if not solved, likely also impact the other production that you may plan to set up. So setting a goal for that improvement will likely pay back sort of double, fixing what is broken now and unlocking equal gains in the opportunities that lay ahead, should you decide to walk that walk later. You also acknowledge the issue that you and your team has identified, and together you will work out a way to solve it, which is also good. Once you've used your diagnosis to flesh out all the potential problems and used these problems to form real goals, you can do the same for the opportunities that you have discovered. This work should leave you with a list of goals, some focused on what seems obvious improvements and some more opportunity-oriented. Remember that a real goal is specific, measurable, and preferably time-constrained. It does not dictate how you should solve it, simply stating that you wish to address it with a concrete, measurable, and time-constrained desired outcome. So typically, a goal will be judged by those who will make it happen by its parameters. That is how attainable it is, so how big the improvement is, and over what time frame. More often than not, this directly correlates to the resources available to make it real. But at this time, we don't care too much about that because the size of the improvement and the time frame can always be adjusted. The key output here is to identify the goals, while the X and the Y parameters, so how much and how fast, can always be adjusted. And this brings us into the first iterative cycle in the work of developing and executing on a real strategy. Once you have your diagnosis and you have identified problems and opportunities and formed these into candidate goals, that is, proposed goals you could choose to work towards achieving, you normally will start to see that if you decide to focus on certain goals, it will likely require you to take specific actions, such as, could be hire more people, engage an agency, buy new equipment, and so on. And if you do these actions, your situation will change. And to an extent, also require you to perform a new diagnosis once your actions have been performed. We will talk more about this later, the concept of iteration and why this is crucial in strategy work and strategy execution. But now you need to do the hard thing of picking what goals to focus on. There are many ways to do this, but in a business environment, assuming you're here to make money, there is a fairly intuitive way to make your selection. So from your diagnosis, you should have discovered if you, for example, have unfair advantages compared to your current or assumed future competitors. This could be if you have a patent and effectively, operate in a monopoly, or if you don't have any competitors yet, or you have an asset or otherwise a position that is hard to replicate or compete with. Equally, you should have identified if you have clear disadvantages compared to competitors or the development in the market generally, such as if prices have already started to drop, hurting your margin, and there is no obvious way for you to fix that. These parameters should aid you in your goal-picking process. If there is no foreseeable competition, you may not need to spend time fixing problems that have little margin impact and can rather focus on other more, opportunistic goals, and vice versa. I'll not dictate or guide you further in your goal selection or priority process, other than reminding you that this is a process and the selections you make now at this stage are not final. You are working your way through the simple strategy framework, and the result of your work will become apparent down the line, and you will most likely have to go back and make adjustments with the resulting cascade of changes that follow anyway. So don't overthink the first time you do this. Just do it. Look at your diagnosis, understand your situation, consider your resources. Typically, you may not have an abundance of money, so picking goals that obviously require you to invest a lot to make the goal attainable are candidates for disqualification. You can park them for now, find lower hanging fruit, and pick goals that are easier to work with so that you can complete the framework, learn the process, and start iterating. Okay, so let's assume you have selected one or a few goals and that these are real goals, specific, measurable, and time restricted. And here are some few examples. Reduce search result load time by 30% within 60 days. Increase monthly sales of rubber ducks from 30 to 60 ducks within 60 days. Reduce number of customer support calls by 50% within 90 days. Reach at least 5 mentions of our company on TV within 90 days. So these goals are all fairly different to exemplify how goals may be formed based on the underlying diagnosis that we've made. There should be a sensible reason for us to want to achieve each individual goal, and my examples are not intended to make sense as a group, but one could imagine that a search company has identified that the competing search engine is faster than theirs and that customers expect faster search results. So it's key to their advertising business that people stick around. So from their diagnosis, they see a flattening out of the search growth or even a decline. And to counter this, it is assumed that the search result delivery time is important. So reducing search result load time is identified as an important goal. Or a rubber duck brand has a basic operational cost of their business, and to make a profit, they simply need to sell more rubber ducks. And they have a lot of them in stock, so all efforts should be made on doubling their sales, or they need to shut down their business because basic operational costs are fixed. Or a software company is struggling to provide timely customer support as their software is popular, but the amount of inbound calls grows linear with their install base. So they need to find a way to cut the inbound call volume in half to avoid having to double their customer support team. Or a cool new apparel brand has figured out that their sales skyrocketed beyond any previously paid advertisement volume when they got mentioned on TV once. So they want to replicate this to continue their growth without emptying their pockets on paid ads. So these are some examples. Remember that goals they do not contain information about how to make them real. So during this process, it's important to stay focused on your diagnosis and form goals that address problems and opportunities without explaining how you will address them. If during this process you spot obvious things you could do, that is great. That is a fantastic opportunity for you to capture possible solutions to problems or ways to address opportunities, but note them down as ideas and keep them away from your list of goals to stay focused. The actions you will take to make your goals become reality is something we will do later. So, gather your team and start listing your proposed goals based on your diagnosis. Where do you want to go? What is your desired destination?